A guten Erev Shabbos. Last week we spoke about the fact that the Rebbe had the ability to energize thousands of young people to travel to the other side of the world to try to spread Yiddishkeit was as a result, to a very large extent, of the Rebbe making Yiddishkeit to us real. That mitzvahs were real, Yiddishkeit is real, it is relevant, it is significant, and it is something that you can see the impact of doing mitzvahs. And we spoke about how the Rebbe showed through individuals how certain mitzvahs impacted the lives in those areas that they were lacking. And it was something that was extremely powerful. And it's very interesting that this making those sort of miracles is something that the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, in the Shara Yichud Ve'emunah, speaks about the fact that when Hashem created the world, it's the first words of the Torah are Bereshis Bara Elokim, that Hashem created, in the beginning, Hashem created the world. But which name of Hashem is used to connotate his existence? Shem Elokim. And we know that Hashem is known by many different names. There's the Shem Havaya and there's Shem Elokim. These are the major names that we find associated with Hashem. What is the difference between Shem Havaya and Shem Elokim? Shem Havaya is the name of mercy, of revelation. Shem Elokim is the name of contraction, of concealment. When Hashem created the world, he created the world in such a fashion that godliness was concealed. Godliness was not revealed. And then ultimately he saw that if there won't be any revelation of godliness, then the world will not be able to maintain its existence. There is a very, very well-known expression from this great tzaddik that everyone has heard of, Rabbi Yitzchok Mibaditchev. Rabbi Yitzchok Mibaditchev is well known to have been the individual who, so to speak, continued dialogues with God and was a defense attorney for the Jewish people. He always used to find the positive in whatever anybody did, and even those things which seemed negative, he turned it around to the positive. And he used to say, Hashem, how can you possibly be unhappy with the conduct of the Jewish people when they sin? What else can you expect? When we speak about the mitzvahs, the positive commandments, we speak about the averos, the negative commandments, and Jews are encouraged and required to do the mitzvahs and to refrain from the transgressions. Now, why is it that they are motivated to do the mitzvahs, and why is it that they can possibly refrain from doing the transgressions? It is because of their belief in Hashem. But in actual fact, in front of their eyes, they see the temptations of this world, the pleasures of the flesh. That is what they see. And where is it that they learn about the fires of hell as a result of transgressions? In a book. So he said there is a book, it's called the Reishis Chochmeh. It's a Musar book, and that describes in detail all the different types of punishments and sufferings that the neshama will have after he passes away from this world as a result of his sins. How we actually understand that is a separate issue that we're not going to go into this evening. But that Sefer discusses the consequences of sin. On the other hand, the motivation to serve Hashem is simply as a result of our belief. It is not something that we see. So he used to say, Hashem, how can you possibly blame your people? If the temptations of the flesh would be in a book and the fires of hell would be in front of everyone's eyes, you can be assured of the fact that nobody would ever sin. But what do you expect of them when there is a total concealment of godliness? People do not see godliness. How then do you expect them to maintain their continued commitment to Hashem and to the mitzvahs? When there is too much concealment, it is very, very hard. And indeed, for those individuals who, notwithstanding the concealments, serve Hashem, they reach the highest levels. It's as we have spoken in the past few weeks, that as the Tzemach Tzedek said, that the purpose of the neshama coming down to this world is to be faced by challenges of concealment, because it's as a result of that we are able to achieve the highest spiritual levels. But Hashem saw that only concealment is going to be impossible. So he needed to make exceptions where there will be revelations of godliness, which will be able to inspire people with the recognition that there is a higher power, there is a creator. And even though we don't see him, that does not negate the fact that he is there. So what were these exceptions? So the Alter Rebbe in Tanya says that the exceptions were the miracles of the Torah and miracles that tzaddikim perform. The miracles of the Torah is like in Kriyas Yamsuf. In Kriyas Yamsuf, in the splitting of the sea, there were revelations, mystical, spiritual, godly revelations. What were the revelations? That the concealment of godliness did not exist. That people, everyone said, Ze keli v'anvehu, this is my God. They were able to point and say, this is my God. They saw godliness. They saw the power of God in all of creation. Now that in itself should have given them, and certainly did give them, the continued inspiration to recognize that the concealment of godliness is simply part of God's intention to enable us to be challenged. But the concealment is not an indication of God not being there. These miracles in the Torah emphasize this particular concept, and miracles that the righteous men have made throughout the generations was in each generation there were great righteous men who were able to show godliness in our existence. They were able to peel away the layers of concealment. Now this in itself is a difficult concept, and to talk about this particular concept, I am going to explain the process, how it took place, how the creation took place, and how the revelation will take place when Mashiach comes. Because the purpose of our exile and our challenges in exile is to bring spirituality to a point of a critical mass where the concealment of godliness is going to be removed. Because we are told when the Mashiach will come, it says the prophecy in Yeshayahu, in Isaiah, V'nigla kvoid Hashem v'ro'u kol bosor yachdov ki pi Hashem diber. V'nigla kvoid Hashem, the glory of God is going to be revealed. V'ro'u kol bosor yachdov, and all of flesh, all of man, are going to be able to see with their eyes, ki pi Hashem diber, the words, the mouth of Hashem, how he has spoken. They will see the power of Hashem's creation. Question is, we look at this world and we don't really see godliness. We look at the heavens, we see a sky, we see the earth, we see mountains, we see rivers, we see valleys. Where is God in all of this? Now we know that God is all over. That is, all the children that have been taught the song, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is everywhere. Hashem is everywhere, but what does that actually mean? They tell the story of one of the Gerer Rebbes when he was a small child, and one of the older Chassidim said to him, I will give you a kopke, a small coin, if you will tell me where you can find God. So he responded, I will give you 2 kopkes if you'll tell me where God is not, where he is not found. It's all wonderful. But what does this actually mean? What does it mean that God is everywhere? The Baal Shem Tov interprets a verse in Tehillim that says, La'olam Hashem devorcha nitzov b'shamayim. Your words remain continually in heaven. So he explains that we know that the world was created through 10 utterances. Ba'asorim amoros nivra ha'olam, it says in the Mishnah, the world was created with 10 utterances. By Hashem saying, Yehi Rokia, they will be a firmament, there'll be heavens. These words were the godly energy that actually created the heavens. Now, unlike when a human being, a master craftsman, will create a beautiful table, and he puts all of his life and soul into creating a masterpiece. Nonetheless, when he finishes his work, the table remains without his efforts. And people understand, people assume that the creation of the world is in the same way, that Hashem created the world, but then the world exists. So the Baal Shem Tov explains, no, it is not like that at all. Hashem created the world with this godly energy. It's the energy that remains in what has been created. And if Hashem would like to destroy the world, all he needs to do is to remove his energy and it would all disappear. Now, to give an example of this, we know matter. Now, I am not a scientist, but you can find this material very easily on Google. Matter. What is matter? Well, matter is what you see in the world. How many elements are there? Well, say 109 or more, approximately. Different elements. What makes one element different to another element? Well, it's atoms. and there are, say, about 109 atoms, different atoms. When we speak about atoms, what is an atom? Well, atom is the basic building block of ordinary matter. Atoms can join together to form molecules, which in turn form most of the objects around us. How big is an atom, which is the basic building block of the universe? Well, to give an example, an atom is 1,000,000 times smaller than the thickest human hair. 1,000,000 times smaller than a hair. A single drop of water contains about 1,000,000 times 1,000,000,000,000 atoms of oxygen. One drop of water. And twice that many hydrogen atoms. So these are the building blocks. Why does one atom create water and another atom create something else? That's because of the structure of this little atom. The atom has a nuclei of there's protons and neutrons and electrons. And each atom, these are all a little bit of different types and forms of energy, which are what makes this atom different to another atom. For example, a carbon atom has 6 protons and 6 neutrons and 6 electrons. A magnesium atom has 12 protons and neutrons and electrons. A calcium atom has 20 protons, neutrons, and electrons. These are what makes the atom different. Different energy, a little different energy. And these nuclei are very, very, very small compared. The atom is massive compared to the nuclei. If an atom were the size of the Earth, then the nucleus would be the size of a football stadium. Nonetheless, these are the building blocks of creation. Now just imagine if we would have the ability to remove the atoms from the mountain, what would remain of the mountain? Absolutely nothing. Because it is the atoms that give existence to the matter. The reason that there is a difference between gold and diamonds and carbon is because of the nuclei, as I've explained. Why is there a difference between the two? Simply because of the fact that Hashem created the world with 22 letters, the 22 letters of the Aleph Beis. Each letter has a different formation. That formation is the special godly energy that created the nuclei. It created the atoms. And the reason that one atom is different to another atom, because the energy that created it is a different type of energy. It's a different letter. It's a different holy letter with which Hashem created the world. So do we see the atoms? We don't. Although in actual fact, I found again on Google that the scientists have come up with a microscope that can actually see an atom. And so obviously, if that is the case, the time will come where they may create a microscope where they'll be able to see the nuclei. And then behind that, there are other subatomic particles that give that its creation. But the difference between all of these energy forms is because of the energy forms of the holy letters that Hashem created the world with. So in the same way that we say that if we would remove the atoms from the objects, from matter, matter would disappear. So if Hashem would remove his energy, his godly energy that gives life to those atoms, then automatically it would all disappear. So there is godliness all over. Every single existence is an existence, an extension of godliness. But we don't see the godliness. But the same way that theoretically the microscope can see the atoms, the same way God gave us the ability at the time of the splitting of the Red Sea to have the mask removed, for us to be able to see the energy that gave life to all of creation. And they were able to say, Ze keli v'anveyu, this is my God. I see. This is God who's created the world. I see the God of creation all around me. When Mashiach will come, and there will be this critical mass of goodness and kindness and spirituality, which is cumulative from all generations, then there will be this major explosion, and God will then enable us to see the godliness in creation. But until such time that that happens, that's really a little bit of a problem, because we are challenged because there is this concealment. So therefore, as a result of which, we have these miracles of the tzaddikim, where we are able to see glimpses of godliness and spirituality. Now, I will share with you something that happened to our family many years ago. Now, just to, in the first instance, give a little bit of a background, there is an old Jewish tradition that when we have a problem, not a halachic issue, when you have an halachic issue, a question of law, you go to a rabbi to be able to give you guidance as to how to conduct yourself. But when you have an issue not in law, but in life, ideals, concepts that you are not sure of, so the Jewish tradition is that we open a book, we open the Bible, we open a holy book, and we hope to get guidance from the page that we open, taking into account that we believe that the Torah is a Torah of life, and therefore God will enable the Torah to give us guidance when necessary. So after the passing of the Rebbe, many Chassidim took, when they were faced with issues that they didn't really know how to decide, and questions that normally they would have asked the Rebbe. So there are over 20 printed editions of letters that the Rebbe wrote, thousands of letters to different people in different circumstances and different issues. And one writes in one's question, and one puts it in a book, in one of these books. You open the book, and if you are fortunate, you will find a response that will actually pertain to the question that you have asked. So this goes back 25 years, 26 years, and at that stage, my son, who subsequently Rabbi Moti Feldman, who became the rabbi of the Dover High Shul, he was getting married in Israel to a young lady from Yerushalayim. My daughter, Fruma, who's married to Rabbi Nochem Shapiro, the Shliach of the North Shore, had a few young children, and they wanted to go to the wedding that was going to be taking place in Yerushalayim. So they wrote to the Rebbe and asked the Rebbe for a blessing. They wrote their letter, they put it in a book, and the Rebbe's letter was specific. You are planning to go to a wedding in Yerushalayim of your relative, and I give you a blessing that your trip should be successful, etc., etc. Then, at the end of the letter, there was a postscript. Make sure that the mezuzahs in your home are checked. Okay, they were very pleased that they received this very clear answer and blessing from the Rebbe, but they didn't really think that the instruction to check the mezuzahs was really relevant to them because they have just recently purchased new mezuzahs. So they thought that this particular aspect is not relevant. So they started on their travels, and their itinerary was firstly America, where they visited my daughter that lives in Washington, D.C. Her husband is the shliach in Washington, D.C. And then into New York to go to the Rebbe Zoil. And then subsequently to go to Yerushalayim. They were in Washington, and being in Washington, they were staying at my daughter's place, at my daughter Nechama, and suddenly their son, Peretz, got sick. He was approximately 4 years old. He got sick, and they didn't know what was wrong with him, but he was getting worse, and he seemed to be in very, very bad shape. So they took him to the hospital, and the doctor says that they really don't know what's wrong with him. Something is wrong with him, but they haven't been able to ascertain what it is, and he is really in very bad shape. He's in critical condition. So Fruma called up, and we were talking about it, and then we spoke about the Rebbe's letter. And I said, the Rebbe did say that you need to check your mezuzahs. So he says, yeah, but, we just bought new mezuzahs. I said, well, we're going to have to do something about it. Now, this happened to be about 10 or 11 o'clock at night here in Sydney. That was 9 o'clock in the morning in Washington. So I called the Sofer here, Rabbi Shlomo Israel, who's a lovely, lovely person, very committed individual. And I said to him, listen, Shlomo, I need you to do me a favor. You need to travel to the North Shore in the middle of the night, give you the key, go into the house, check the mezuzahs. It's a matter of pekuach nefesh. It really is a very serious situation. So he dutifully, with the kindness that he possesses, middle of the night, he went to the North Shore, he went to St. Ives, and he checked the mezuzahs, and he found that the mezuzah on the door of Peretz's bedroom was posel. So he immediately put up a kosher mezuzah. That is what happened. Within the next 24 hours, the condition of the child improved out of sight to the extent he was able to be released. Now, this was an amazing, amazing miracle. Firstly, getting the response in the first instance, and then secondly, how even a postscript was so relevant that the Rebbe said you should check the mezuzahs in your home. Because a mezuzah has, as part of its integral value, is that it looks after the people in whose home they are placed. as the mezuzah is shomer dalsos Yisrael, whether you are there or you are not there, the mezuzah is something which guards the family and guards the home. The Rebbe showed us again and again how a mitzvah is something that is relevant to our very existence. This was an instance where the concealment was removed and we all saw the godliness, the revelation of godliness. There are thousands of stories of this nature, but this, I'm only bringing this out to show how the concealment that exists is there so that we should be able to have challenges. But once we overcome the challenges, and when we are fortunate enough to have a revelation, then of course it makes our service of God so much easier. I just hope and pray that we very, very soon reach a stage where all the concealments of godliness are going to be removed, where all of mankind is going to recognize the existence of God, and all of mankind together with the greatest degree of brotherhood will together all serve God. And this hopefully should take place very soon with the coming of Mashiach. You should all have a good Shabbos.